What's going on, everybody? Hope you're all doing well, and I hope you're all as excited as I am for the return of Benidorm Fest. In just a few weeks, all eyes will be on Spain as they select their song and artist for Eurovision 2023. And after the immense success of last year, not just for the festival, but also at Eurovision, you can imagine that expectations are sky high. So let's talk about which one of these 18 artists will be the successor to La Reina, La Dura, Una Bugatti, Chanel. So RTVE has been building tons of hype in the lead up to the festival. We of course got our first look at the artists back in October, and the impression that we had back then was that this year was going to be more of a pop-heavy selection. Now that we have the songs, that actually turned out to be true. And if I think about why that may be, it could have been the fact that Chanel was so successful, and record companies are seeing the potential that a Eurovision artist could have now that RTV is taking things seriously and putting so much money into Eurovision itself and also Benidorm Fest. From a competition point of view, I would say the festival is just as competitive this year as it was last year. But I also feel like a little bit of the magic was lost because it's so focused on dance pop this time around. A friend of mine from Eurovox, Samuele, actually put it pretty nicely. He said that it seemed like last year every song was a bit more unique and was kind of doing its own thing, whereas this year there seems to be more songs that get kind of lost in the mix. Of course, there is diversity in the selection, and I think that would be absolutely necessary for a selection of this size, but it will be interesting to see whether or not the win will go to one of those outliers, or if it will be one of the artists from the dance pop group. And maybe even if right now their song isn't getting a lot of attention, they might show up with something that's very polished and professional, much like Chanel did last year. Personally, that's the question that I have. Maybe you have other thoughts and questions. And I think on that note, we should dive into the music. I'm going to be focusing mostly on the ones that are jumping out at me, and also talking a little bit about the ones that are generating buzz too. Agoné's song is one that makes itself known right away. It's a dance pop banger with a really dark bass line and a driving beat all throughout. And this is the one that seems to be the favorite from an international point of view. And I have to say that it's not too surprising. Firstly, it's one of the dance pop songs that seems to be kind of doing its own thing. And it sounds like it's here to win, not simply to just capitalize on being part of the festival. Second, there's tons of Eurofan appeal here. You know, it's a bop. It's the kind of music that a lot of people hope to see. And it's also got tons of queer energy too. Agoné is openly gay and his style is very flamboyant. Musically speaking, apart from it having a bit of an abrupt ending, I don't really have much to complain about. I think it's a pretty solid song. I do think, however, that in order for this to work, the staging is going to have to be like perfect. And I think one of the key elements is going to be lighting, because it's a dark sounding song. And I'm thinking that what we need to see is, you know, shadows, contrast, colors, especially. He has mentioned in interviews that he's working with David Pizarro on his staging, and he's a creative director that has done television, theater, and even worked at amusement parks. So by the sounds of it, it seems like it's going to be a very conceptual stage design. I'm going to hold my opinion on this one to decide whether or not it could actually win until we see the semifinals and see how some of the other songs are doing, but I don't see any reason to think that this wouldn't be one to watch. Mi Familia is the other song that's topping a lot of polls, and in addition to being the most streamed song of the festival, it also seems to be the one that's most popular in Spain, which definitely suggests a chance at success. To me, this feels like the most of the moment song in the selection, and I really enjoy the fact that there's this blend of genres. You've got the more traditional ones like flamenco, and you've got the more modern ones like trap and electronica, and I think it comes together in a way that's really, really nice. What I think really makes the song so effective is the fact that it's just so unpredictable. And I think about moments like in the chorus, the beat suddenly drops away and then it comes back very quickly. And then midway through the song, we get this entirely new beat that's got like really hard, punchy drums. And then suddenly you get this kind of like building synth that comes in. It's just like there's so much to unpack, and it just feels like it takes you in a completely unexpected turn every time. I suppose that there is an argument to be made about whether or not this song might not be that accessible for other people, which I suppose is a bit ironic because it is the most popular song at the moment. But I would also say that it's not a very catchy song, and catchiness is usually considered to be one of the things that makes a Eurovision song successful. But I do think that it's trying to be impactful in a different way, and it doesn't necessarily need to be an earworm in order for people to remember it and vote for it. So with all that said, I have no idea how this is going to go live. And I feel like on the one hand, this is probably a tough song to translate for the stage. But on the other hand, it's already really popular, so maybe the right approach is just to do something that's simple and keeps the focus on her. All I can say is that I'm just really looking forward to it, and I hope that they knock it out of the park. Alice Wonder was one of the artists that seemed to really grab people's attention back when the announcement was made in October. And I think I speak for everyone who was looking forward to her song that it did not disappoint in the slightest. The song is so beautiful. She's bringing a much needed vulnerability to the selection, and I think it's being done in a way that's very impactful. From the start of the song, wherein it's just her voice, and little by little you get instruments that come in, and quickly things really build up momentum to the point where, you know, you've got percussion, you've got some synths, you've got some strings in the background, and it all builds up to this really intense drum roll at the end. The moment that always gets me is in the chorus when she sings, "I wish I could stop time, but I can't." And it's that "I can't," no puedo, that, you know, is the high note, and she sings it with such hurt, as if it's this kind of like, you know, cry of desperation. I find it super, super emotional. I also think that this would be a great opportunity for Spain to send a ballad that's very different from the ones that we've seen in the past, especially since these kind of singer-songwriter songs that are very raw and personal have been doing very well at Eurovision. And even just looking at last year, you could think of Sweden's song, Portugal's, Armenia's, Greece's, Netherlands, like all really impactful songs and some very commercially successful. All in all, a really great proposal, and I see no reason to believe why this wouldn't be great live, so I hope it can go far. There's been lots of excitement for the return of Blanca Paloma at this year's festival. She, of course, made a name for herself last year, making her musical debut with Secreto de Agua, and really captivated people with her spellbinding voice and having a really atmospheric and ethereal song. This one also incorporates elements of flamenco, using a particular vocal style, also incorporating some clapping, and tying that together with some softer electronic sounds to make this really hypnotic experience. In the lyrics, she describes the love that she has for her child. She talks about wanting to protect them and to have them close at all times. And she even says that when she dies, she wants to be buried in the moon so that she can watch over them every night. She's also described the song as being about a kind of right that connects with the soul beyond words. And so with the lyrics in mind, it seems to be expressing this idea of an everlasting love. And I feel like the kind of psychedelic sound that it has makes it feel really otherworldly and almost like, you know, something that's speaking to you from the spirit world. This is really a work of art. I am really excited to see how this is going to go live given her background. And even if she doesn't win the festival, I hope that she is able to get an even better result than the one she got last year. Jose is bringing the type of ballad that Spain has been known to appreciate, in the sense that it's big. He's got a big voice, it's very dramatic. I don't even know, would they say like, es una balladaza, no sé. I would say that it reminds me of some of the ballads that we've seen from Spain in the last decade, maybe a little bit more. But the song that I'm actually most reminded of is Arcade. Mostly because in the chorus there's tons of vocalizing, and even like throughout the song, but also because both songs seem to be about the same things. With Arcade, at a surface level, it was just about heartbreak, about losing someone. But at a deeper level, it was about holding on to the hope that you will receive love. And I feel like a song like this, especially with some of the words that he says at the end about how he, refuses to stop loving this person, it can kind of reach that broader message as well. It's also the kind of song where the vocal performance is really going to be front and center, and it's not going to be supported by other factors. And I think that we've seen plenty of really solid vocal performances from Jose to suggest that he will live up to the expectations of the song. What I'm most curious about is how this is actually going to look, because Jose, as we've seen, is not the most expressive singer, at least in his facial expressions and his movements. And I mean, that's fine. That's just how he is. Not everybody can like rock the bass face or like the epic, guitar solo where you're making all those, you know what I'm talking about. But I do think that the visuals are going to have to support that in some way, because it is quite an emotional song. And I feel like maybe the best way of doing that is to, create space, create empty space, and kind of give that sense of absence. I do see lots of people saying that this could be a dark horse for the win, which would be very interesting to see, but of course, we'll have to wait and see what those semifinals look like first.
¿Y qué más vas a hacer si el viento te está llamando? Si la hoguera no se apaga y no sabes a qué volver y distinguir.
Between all the hard-hitting party anthems and the softer and more personal entries, one thing that this selection desperately needs at this point is something that feels kind of uplifting and wholesome. Fortunately, Carmento saves the day with a really beautiful ballad that's a ballad in the truest sense, I would say, because it's got this kind of story at the center of it. Carmento sings of a girl who one day discovers that she has a spark inside her that makes her want to leave home. Her mother's encouraging, her father's a little bit more reluctant, but in the end, they both support her and they wish her well, and they remind her that when she is ever in doubt, she always has somewhere to come back to. From there, her destiny is in her own hands, and she has to decide how far she wants to go and whether or not the spark inside her is still fueling her journey. Because of the style of this song, I think it's pretty safe to say that it's not a competitive entry in the way that we think of competitive entries. And that's simply because it's not trying to capitalize on any popular trends or sounds. It's simply what it is. And for me, that's actually part of the appeal. I really don't know how far this is going to go, but I would like to believe that it could do better than expected. And that's mostly because in the Los Elegidos program, her performance was one of the most memorable ones. And that was mostly because of how expressive she was with both her voice and her dance moves. She also revealed that she's going to be working with Javier Pajeo, who did the staging for Raiden's song last year. And in my opinion, that was the most visually striking performance of them all, putting this moment in particular aside. So with all that in mind, I think that the ingredients are here for something that could be really impactful. And I'm really excited to see how it's going to be.
Desde que tú estás, todo lo que era ahora es algo nuevo. Todo ras de tierra está tocando el cielo. Desde que tú estás.
Another familiar face in this selection is Alfred Garcia, who performed alongside Amaya at the Eurovision Song Contest in 2018. Like that song, Desde que tú estás is also a love song, but this one feels quite a bit more grounded and was actually written by Alfred, whereas Tu Canción from 2018 was written by someone else for Alfred and Amaya. The difference between the two songs is also more evident when you look at the lyrics. So for example, with Tu Canción, it was much more of a fairy tale idea of love, saying things like, I feel like I'm dancing for the first time, you are the art that sweetens my skin, and it's very romanticized and very idyllic. This one is more about the comfort that someone brings when you are in times of need. And so he sings, if I start to scream, everything around me burns, but you look at me with your heart, which to me sounds like a way of saying, like, you see me at my worst, but you still love me. In other words, it's like a more adult love song, a more real love song, and I feel like that is the kind of thing that somebody would want to present if they're best known in the country for having this very public relationship when they were very young that did not last very long. As far as winning chances go, ultimately I don't quite see it, but I do think that there's a lot to respect here, especially the fact that he is coming to the selection having grown quite a bit as a person, and that he wants to show something that expresses more of his artistry and that he has a bit more creative control over. So those are the songs that are jumping out at me the most at the moment. Things may change by the time we actually see the semifinals, and of course there were another 11 songs that I didn't talk about. And if last year is to suggest anything, then it is possible that a song that isn't getting quite as much attention at the moment could end up being a huge favorite in the end. If I had to choose a winner at this point, I would say either Fusa Nocta or Alice Wonder. They're the two that I have the highest hopes in, and I feel like if the live performances really live up to the songs, then they could go really far at Eurovision, even getting into the top 5 again. So obviously there's a lot more to talk about, a lot more to be seen. And on that note, I would love if you subscribe to the channel so that we can keep talking about Benidorm Fest. And I'd love to meet you back here for after the semifinals when we get a better idea of how these songs are actually performing. Don't forget to leave a comment down below. Tell me which ones your favorites are and who do you see winning at this point. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again so we can talk about more things relating to Benidorm Fest and Eurovision as they are obviously coming up very quickly. I'll see you next time. Muchas gracias y nos vemos.